It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills Week 5 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Oh, folks, welcome in. Got to get ready for a big one here. Bills on the road, Week 5 against the Houston Texans. Let's break it down and discuss the keys to victory for the Bills on both sides of the football. So, as you know, the Bills on the road, Week 5, to face the Houston Texans. The game will be played on Sunday, October 6th, 1 o'clock Eastern Time at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. The game will be broadcasted on CBS. Ian Eagle on the play-by-play. Charles Davis is the game analyst, and Evan Washburn, your sideline reporter. This will be the 12th all-time meeting between the Bills and Texans. The Bills are 5-6 so far against Houston, and they're 1-2 under Sean McDermott against the Texans. The last game was a 40-0 Bills win in Buffalo in 2021. Then you had the playoff loss, and then during Josh Allen's rookie season, the Bills lost to the Texans. Josh got hurt in that game. He couldn't finish. The Bills lose 20-13. It was a 13-13 game. Nathan Peterman comes in and throws a pick six with 90 seconds left in the game to give Houston the go-ahead score. And then the Bills get the ball back, and Nathan Peterman throws another pick when he has a chance to tie the game there at the end. But the Bills and Texans both enter this game at 3-1. The Texans so far this year in Week 1, they beat the Colts 29-27. Week 2, they beat the Bears 19-13. In Week 3, they lost to the Vikings 34-7. And then they bounced back last week with a 24-20 win over the Jaguars. Head coach of the Houston Texans is DeMeco Ryans. He's 40 years old. It's his second season in Houston. His first year, they went 10-7, won the AFC South, and they beat the Browns in the wild card round before getting bounced by the Ravens in the divisional round. And he was a good player in the NFL. He was a linebacker for 10 years, a 10-year starter, spent the first 6 years with the Texans, then finished his career 4 seasons with the Eagles. And his career was off to a great start. In those 6 seasons with the Houston Texans as a starting linebacker, he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2006, and then he was named to 2 additional Pro Bowls. And so a good NFL player that's turned into a good head coach. He got his start very quickly. He was a linebackers coach for a number of years in San Francisco before getting 2 years as their defensive coordinator and then getting the chance to be the head coach of the Houston Texans. The quarterback of this football team is C.J. Stroud, 23 years old, was a first-round pick last year, number 2 overall out of Ohio State by the Houston Texans. Has started 19 games to this point. The Texans are 12-7 in those starts. So far this season, he's completing 68% of his passes, 264 passing yards per game, 6 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 98.4. Let's get into his metrics a little bit. So far this year, he has a .05 EPA per dropback. That's 14th among NFL quarterbacks. Throws the ball deep on 9.4% of his throws. And as a reminder, when I say he throws the ball deep, that means 20 yards of 20 yards a depth of target down the field. So that's deep throws, 20 yards down the field. 18th highest in the NFL. And on those deep throws, he's 4 of 13 for 143 yards, 1 interception, a passer rating of 41.5. His EPA on deep throws is 20th in the NFL. Yards after catch, not getting much of that. 46.5% of his yards are after the catch. That's 25th in the NFL. For comparison, Josh Allen is 58.5%. He throws to his first read only 61.9% of times. That's 30th in the NFL. Josh Allen, 54.5%. Dead last, Josh Allen throwing the ball to his first read. These are both quarterbacks that will work progression, survey the field, and really be selective with where they choose to throw the football. C.J. Stroud's catchable ball percentage is 77%. That's 20th in the NFL. Josh Allen, 79%. That's 12th. His off-target throw percentage, 14.4%. That's middle of the pack at 15th. Josh Allen dead last in terms of lowest off-target throw percentage at 9.9%. That's the best in terms of not having off-target throws. C.J. Stroud's turnover-worthy throw percentage is 12.9. That is 12th in the NFL. Josh Allen, 2%. That's 6th. Drop rate, only 2.9%. That's 8th lowest, right there about where Josh Allen is. Hasn't had a whole lot of issues with drops this year. Pressure rate, 34% pressure rate on C.J. Stroud. That's 15th highest, so middle of the pack in terms of allowing pressure. And 24% of pressures result in sacks. That's the 12th highest, so not quite the escapability that you see from a Josh Allen. They run play action 22% of the time. That's 20th. And as for running and kind of the dual threat nature of C.J. Stroud, he's got 11 carries for 41 yards this season. That's 21st in rush yards among quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud is athletic, but he doesn't often weaponize his legs. Now, he can pick his spots, and he's got some skill as a runner, but not a major part of what he does as a football player. And, you kind of watched him at Ohio State, and there were times where you kind of wish he did weaponize his legs a little bit more, but he's definitely more of a thrower, and he's been really good. I'm very impressed with C.J. Stroud, especially as a young player. And if you look over the last 3-4 drafts, you haven't really seen a lot of rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks come in and be very successful. A lot of misses, right? I mean, even the guy picked in front of him, Bryce Young, nowhere near the type of player that C.J. Stroud is. And so while you've seen a lot of quarterbacks come into the league and struggle, hasn't been the case for C.J. Stroud. He's very quickly become very good. And I comb through these metrics. I comb through the film every week, and it's hard to find a lot of issues with C.J. Stroud. Normally, I can study a quarterback and I can say, okay, these are the 2, 3, 4 things that they struggle with, and that's how you develop a game plan to expose those issues. That's not really the case with C.J. Stroud. You go through with and without play action. He's good. Pressure, he's good. Blitz, no blitz, he's good. Has he not necessarily been a great vertical passer this year? He hasn't, but I don't think anybody really has. The vertical passing across the NFL is down, and C.J. Stroud has certainly shown us that he's very potent in that capacity. So he's a good young quarterback. There's no way around it, and he's got a lot of good weapons and good head coach. And so Houston Texans definitely on the up. I'm not sure they've played their best football this year. I would say that even last year, at times I would call them opportunistic, and I think maybe they had some things go their way favorably, but it's a good young operation in Houston, and they're certainly eager to prove that they deserve to be considered among the best teams in the AFC. And they beat the Bills on Sunday. They'll be 4-1. They'll probably be feeling really good, and that division stinks out loud. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're nothing. Tennessee, they're nothing. And the Indianapolis Colts, they might be a mediocre team at best. So they're in the driver's seat of this division. But obviously, as a team that won the division last year with a young team, young coach, young quarterback, won a playoff game last year, they're feeling they're on the up. And so it's an interesting contrast against a team like the Bills, who have kind of been towards the top of the AFC, haven't won the AFC, but certainly been one of the more successful teams in the conference. It's an interesting barometer, if you will, to kind of see, are the Bills truly ahead of Houston, or is Houston really a real legit contender that can make a run at this thing? So really fascinating matchup on Sunday afternoon. All right, we're going to talk more about it here on the other side of it. We're going to break down the rest of the offense and talk about the keys to success for the Bills on defense on Sunday afternoon. Folks, be sure to stick with me. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is also the only real daily money fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's talk more about this offense. The coordinator here, Bobby Slowick, 37 years old, his second season with Houston, his second season as an NFL offensive coordinator. One of those Kyle Shanahan disciples, has been with him for a long time, and he came to Houston, and obviously a lot of attention for how successful C.J. Stroud was as a rookie, and he interviewed, I think, with 4 different teams this past offseason for their head coaching vacancy, and so he's definitely on that type of trajectory and viewed as one of the better young offensive minds in the NFL. So far this year, they've been pretty average, 17th in scoring. That's at 20 points per game. They're passing the ball 62% of the time. That's the 6th most frequent pass team. Only run it 38% of the time. That's 27th. 15th in EPA per play on offense. 9th in EPA per pass. 28th in EPA per rush. Their rushing offense has been pretty uninspiring. They had a big game in week 1 against the Colts. And I think we've learned a lot about the Colts, that their run defense is not very good. And they're only getting 1.52 adjusted yards before contact per rush. That's 20th in the league. And just not a team that's been able to lean on that rushing offense. They're 40% converting third downs. That's middle of the pack at 15th. Very good red zone offense at 73% scoring touchdowns. That is 4th best in the NFL. So good pass team, good red zone team, not really running the ball, and certainly not scoring at the level that I think you expected Houston to at this point, but a very potent operation. Talk about their personnel. Their wide receivers. The story here is Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins might be the 2nd or 3rd best receiver in the NFL right now. Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins. I mean, I think that's kind of where you start the conversation in terms of who are those dudes. He's awesome. He's been targeted 42 times in 4 games. He's got 30 catches, 488 yards. I think that's 100 yards receiving more than any other player in the league. He's big. He's physical. He's athletic. He can win down the field, and he's a bully. He's one of these receivers that at the top of routes, he's going to challenge you with physicality, and he's got body control and ball skills. He is outstanding. You know, I really do believe this is one of the premier young playmakers in the entire NFL. And so he'll be a big challenge for the Buffalo Bills. So he's their #1 receiver. And then they got this guy, you've probably heard of him, Stefon Diggs. He's been targeted 32 times so far this year. You know, Steph, you watched him for 4 years. I don't think Stefon Diggs is quite the vertical threat that he's been in the past. And when Tank Dell is in the lineup, you can tell he's running a lot of different routes, not quite as involved down the field, a lot of short routes. But, you know, Steph's a good route runner. CJ Stroud's an accurate quarterback. And, you know, they're a good pair. And I think Steph as a guy that gets to play alongside a talent like Nico Collins, that's probably best for him at this point in his career in this style of offense. Tank Dell, young player, had a great rookie season before he got injured. And he's back. He's been injured. He missed last week. I think it was a rib injury or something. Good young player. Doesn't have any size, but he is lightning in a bottle with speed and route running, and he's a guy that plays well above his weight class, and I'm sure they're going to be eager to get him going as he continues to kind of reassert himself into the lineup. They got a lot of depth at receiver. Robert Woods, late-stage Robert Woods is on this team. John Mechie, a good young player, but really the receiving core is about Nico Collins, Stefon Diggs, and Tank Dell. At tight end, they got a good starter in Dalton Schultz. Not overly dynamic, right? Not like this mismatch type player, but very steady in terms of receiving ability, can run those bench routes and just create some separation, catch the ball, get tackled type player. And so not a super dynamic presence, but a reliable, steady NFL starting tight end. And he's backed up by Cade Stover, a young player out of Ohio State, physically gifted, has been pretty inconsistent, though, as a rookie who's had to play a little bit more with Brevin Jordan getting injured. So the tight end room really about Dalton Schultz, but they will play some 12. They're about half 11 personnel, half 12 personnel. So they will play multiple tight ends on the field. Their running back situation, a lot of question marks here. Joe Mixon, they traded for him from the Cincinnati Bengals, got off to a great start, and then he's been injured. He hasn't practiced on Wednesday or Thursday. Not really sure what his status is as of the recording of this podcast. Seems like it's very much in jeopardy. Same with Dameon Pierce, who's their preferred backup. He's been injured. It doesn't sound like he's definitely trending towards he's going to play. So you want to keep an eye on the status of both of those running backs. And if they can't go, Cam Akers becomes the lead back. And I think Cam Akers, a guy that's bounced around quite a bit since he's had multiple injuries, kind of looks like a replacement level back. And then Dare Ogunbowale, just a depth running back, a third running back type player, can play special teams, can catch it a little bit, has some skill as a runner, but, one of those journeyman RB3s, if you will. So notable loss if they're not able to have Joe Mixon on Sunday. The offensive line, there's a lot of investment here. I think they've been okay. Their left tackle, Laremy Tunsil, has been one of the better left tackles in the game. I think his last season into this one has been a bit of a drop-off. The penalties have been unbelievable. He's been flagged 12 times already this year through 4 games, and Tunsil's been a highly penalized offensive lineman throughout his career, but he is in a slump in a big way right now with getting penalties. Their left guard is Kenyon Green, was a first-round pick a few years ago. Quite frankly, he's not been good. Had struggles as a rookie, then he missed all of last season, and he's come back this year and clearly been the weak link of this offensive line. And so he's picked in the top 15 for a reason, but he hasn't come close to showing that level of promise. Their center is Juice Scruggs. Played guard last year a little bit. This year he's playing center. Not a very firm anchored player, but he's athletic and he's a bit lean. So there could be some good matchup opportunities there against an inexperienced center. The right guard is Shaq Mason, a good NFL starter, long-term player in the league, started his career with the Patriots, and he went to the Bucs. Now he's with Houston. He used to be one of the best guards in the NFL. I don't think he's that anymore, but still a sufficient level starter. And then the right tackle, Titus Howard, has played a lot of different spots for Houston up front. I think he's best at right tackle where he's currently playing. Had a little bit of an injury flare-up this week in practice. You want to pay attention to his status. If he can't go, a rookie, Blake Fisher, would be the guy that is called upon to replace him. And again, I think he's a sufficient level NFL starter. So what are my keys for the Bills on defense against this offense? Let's first start by acknowledging the bounce back opportunity defensively against a really different team. I think lost in the aftermath of all the overreaction to the Bills' performance against Baltimore, and I certainly had plenty to say about the choices the Bills made on defense. This is not that same type of team, and fortunately for the Bills, that won't ever be the case again unless they play Baltimore. Baltimore is a uniquely designed football team with the backfield talent that they have of Henry and Jackson, with a 300-pound fullback and Patrick Ricard. And they had so many wrinkles to that run scheme that the Bills were not ready to deal with, and especially hard when the second level of your defense is not your starters, right? It was just a nightmare matchup. This is a really different challenge. It's a pass-aggressive team that struggles to run the ball, and I think the matchup is just a lot more favorable for the Bills in this one. So embrace the new challenge, flush last week behind you, take what you need to learn from it, but get back on track. I mean, the Bills defense matches up so much better with the Houston Texans. Number 2 is Nico Collins. I mean, you've heard me rave about this guy a few different times this week. I think he's really special. Now, one thing I will say is that the Bills' corner tandem of Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, I think, match up about as good as you can with a player like this, where, Benford and Douglas both have good size. They're physical. They are instinctive players in zone. They have good ball skills. I think they'll be very competitive against him. And look, I mean, I don't think you're going to take him completely off the menu. I think that's one of the things that really surprises me about watching Nico Collins is how good he is, how much of a focal point he is in this offense, but at the same time, the guy gets loose down the field all the time. And so I think that's a testament of a great player. You watch that when you watch the Vikings with Justin Jefferson, you're like, everybody in the world knows this guy is the best receiver in the league, but nobody can come close to stopping him. Why is he wide open? Yeah, these are what the good players are able to do. And I think Nico Collins is that type of guy. But I do think that Benford and Douglas are good matchup counters, but still a big-time challenge for the Bills' pass defense and their cornerbacks. And then number 3, it's time for the Bills' defensive tackles to wake up. This interior offensive line is not very good, particularly that left guard, Kenyon Green. You've got to dominate that matchup. If you're Ed Oliver and he's got this hamstring deal that flared up on Thursday, we'll certainly be monitoring his status. But if he's ready to go, you have got to eat. And I'm sure that Ed Oliver, back in the state of Texas, in his hometown of Houston, he's going to be fired up. We've seen that happen for Ed a few different times in his career. I'm expecting big things from Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. I don't know about the depth, right? It could be dicey. Austin Johnson's injured. They signed this new dude, Zion Logue. He's from the Falcons practice squad. He's probably going to have to play. Maybe Eli Yanku gets called up this week, Dwayne Carter. But Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver have got to win these matchups up front because it certainly favors them. And with those two guys off to a slow start, there's no time like this time right here against this team with these players to really wake up and make a big-time impact. So embrace the new challenge, have the right plan for Nico Collins, and your interior defensive line, it's time for them to wake up. All right, on the other side of it, folks, we're talking Houston defense against the Bills offense. Be sure to stick with me. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, want to make you guys aware, I launched a Substack. It's called Herd Mentality. I'm building a sub-brand here. And Substack is a place where I'm writing articles. And I'm having a lot of fun writing at least 3 a week. This week, I'm writing 5, breaking down different things. A weekly column on Josh Allen, a weekly big picture thoughts column, a weekly scouting column on the Bills' upcoming opponent. And then this past week, I also did the first quarter evaluation. So I updated all of my player grades for every player on the Bills, and I had 3 players that I think have elevated their level of play, 4 that have regressed. And then I also did a first quarter report card where I graded and provided a bunch of metrics and analysis on the Bills' pass offense, pass defense, rush offense, special teams. And I think it was a pretty comprehensive article. Check it all out. I have a link in today's show notes to see the Herd Mentality Substack, and you can check it out. I'm really proud of the analysis. I'm proud of the visual presentation. Would love for you to be part of it. There's a link in today's show notes to check that out. All right, let's talk about this defense that is coordinated by Matt Burke, 48 years old, second season as Houston's defensive coordinator, was the Dolphins defensive coordinator in 2017 and 2018, longtime assistant coach in the league since 2004. Obviously, DeMeco Ryans as a defensive-minded head coach has a lot to do with the organization of this defense. Let's get into some metrics here. They're 22nd in scoring, 24 points per game allowed so far this year. 17th in EPA per play, 11th in EPA per pass, 27th in EPA per rush. That should make your eyes widen. 40% on third down, that's 21st. 75% in the red zone, that's 28th. So okay against the pass, average overall, bad against the run, bad on third downs, bad in the red zone. Structurally, their coverage shells, they run too high, middle of the field open 42% of the time. That's 25th in the NFL. So not a defense that skews heavily like that, like the Bills are. They're one high, middle of the field closed 58% of the time. That's 8th. So they definitely skew more one high, middle of the field closed. They will play some man coverage. I think they're about 28% man coverage this year. So That's the type of defense they're facing. They blitzed a fair amount as well, 31% blitz rate on pass downs. That's 8th highest in the NFL. And again, I like to remind people the Bills are the lowest blitz rate in the NFL at 14%. And so kind of curious to see how these metrics evolve coming out of the Baltimore game for the Bills on defense in particular, where they've been reluctant to play heavy boxes. They've been reluctant to blitz. And so I'm kind of curious to see how this evolves for the Bills defensively, in the coming games. But back to the Houston Texans defense. Let's talk about their personnel. Their defensive tackles, I think this is a weakness of the team. Fali Fadikasi's their nose tackle. He's a sufficient level starter. But then his running mate is Mario Edwards, who I think is more of a depth player that is starting for them. And then their third best defensive tackle is Tim Settle, which should tell you everything you need to know. And they've got a couple other replacement level guys that they will play. But this is a clear weakness on this football team. Fadikasi's a serviceable starter, but the rest, I don't really think they have it. Now, Denico Autry is a player they're supposed to have who's suspended. He's not available for this game. That will elevate this defense, but until he gets back, I think they have a weakness here on the interior defensive line. Not on the edge. They got two really good starters. Danielle Hunter, longtime Minnesota Viking, high-impact edge rusher, and he's paired with Will Anderson, a top 5 pick from last year out of Alabama, had a great rookie season, and he's a good-looking young edge rusher. So they have terrific edge rushers, maybe not so much on the inside. And they have good depth. Derek Barnett, a good depth player. I don't know that you want him to start, but a veteran that's made some big plays in the NFL. Jerry Hughes, that guy. He hasn't played a ton this year, but they have some injuries to some of their depth behind Hunter and Anderson, so I think you could see Hughes factor in a little bit more on Sunday. Rashad Weaver, another depth player. Those are decent third, fourth, fifth defensive ends that are behind some really good starters in Hunter and Anderson. At linebacker, Azeez Al-Shaair, good young linebacker, experience with D'Amico Ryans together with the San Francisco 49ers, where Shahir played behind the outstanding pair of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Got a chance to go start last year in Tennessee, played well, and now he's starting in Houston. He's a good player. His running mate is supposed to be Christian Harris, who's not available, and that'd be a really good pair of young linebackers. Instead, they have to rely on Henry To'o. To'o, mid-round pick out of Alabama. I think he's more of a depth player, so certainly the Bills will want to take advantage of that. At corner, they got one of the best young corners in the NFL, and Derek Stingley really came on last season, has been okay to start this year, certainly a dynamic talent. And then his running mate is Kamari Lassiter, a rookie out of Georgia. I think the Bills should have some good opportunities to attack him. I think he's been up and down. He's made some plays. He's eliminated some plays, but when you watch him on a snap-by-snap basis, there is some separation that he does give up down the field, and that should be a great opportunity for the Bills to maybe go at that matchup. They got a pretty good slot player in Jalen Petrie, a young player, good tackler, very physical. They'll blitz him quite a bit, and I don't think he's an elite player, but I think he's a good starter and a good young player. At safety, Jimmy Ward, veteran. I think he's been in the league for 100 years in this exact system. And he provides a veteran presence. He's lost a step for sure. He's been banged up this year. He's missed some time this year. I think he's on track to play against the Bills. They got Kalen Bullock, rookie starter at the other safety spot. Athletic, rangy safety, not super physical. Ball skills, he certainly has those, but a young player in the league. And then they'll play Eric Murray. Eric Murray's kind of the third safety, can play in the slot a little bit. And he's been a longtime veteran in the league that provides quality depth in a sub-package role. So that's their defensive personnel. What are my keys for the Bills on offense against this defense? Number one, run the ball. I mean, this run defense hasn't been good. I don't think that their interior defensive linemen are strong. I think they have a deficiency at one of their linebacker spots. You got young players in the secondary that are involved in run fits. Run the ball. I think this is one of those games where you should be able to be very multifaceted with your approach, two-dimensional, and use the run and really allow that to be a big part of what you do. And, of course, you still want to throw it. You have Josh Allen. But this is one of those games where you feel like you should be able to dictate terms with your run game and build a lot off of that. Number two, you got to have the right protection plan. I think this has been an issue for the Bills this year where they went 5-man protections early. Then they started keeping guys in. and they got kind of got by sim pressures and the threat of pressures, and you're wasting eligibles to stay in to block nobody and still giving up some pressure, communication issues on the interior. This is a great opportunity for the Bills to kind of settle in. This is a bit of a blitz aggressive defense, 30%. They'll blitz the backers. They'll blitz that slot corner, Jalen Petrie. And they got 2 good edge rushers. So you got to be kind of prepared for guys to move around, blitzes to come from some different angles, but ultimately shore up your plan and shore up your execution of those protection plans. And that's going to be important. And then number 3, you got to attack this young secondary. They got 2 rookie starters. Petrie's still a young player. I mean, Stingley's still a young player, even though he's very good. I think you should be able to stress them in some unique ways with your depth of weapons and, how it's not about one player. And I think that's going to be important. So I'm optimistic for the Bills on offense in this game. And I think that stems from some of the talent issues that Houston has in a few spots, but also you should be able to run it and you should be able to throw it. And so I'm looking for a big bounce back game. For as much as we talked about the defense and the deplorable defensive game plan that the Bills had against Baltimore, that offense couldn't seize momentum either. And so kind of a nice opportunity to get back on schedule after 3 games that we were really satisfied with to start the year. Let's talk special teams real quick. Their kicker's a good one. Kaimi Fairburn has been their kicker for a long time, since 2017, 8 seasons now as their kicker, and he's been really good the last 3. The previous 2 seasons, I think he was like 94% made. And he had some struggles earlier in his career. He had 2 seasons below 80%. After he was like 88% in his second season. So they kind of stuck with him, and he figured it out. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Let's hope that's the case with the Bills kicker. He's been, if you look at the aggregate across the last 3 years, he's over 90%. I know he kicks indoors in Houston, but that didn't stop him from being below 80% in 2 other seasons earlier in his career. Also, this is a team that is fine with kick returns. They like them. They only 50% of kicks are touchbacks, so they've got a fair amount of kick returns that they defend, and so the Bills should have some opportunities to return the ball on kickoffs. Their punter's a good one. Tommy Townsend, I think he's one of the best punters in the game. Was with the Chiefs for the last 4 seasons, and they've moved on, and they have Matt Araiza now in Kansas City, but Tommy Townsend is an excellent young punter. And then the returner is Steven Sims. I don't want to deal with that guy. He's good, and not because he's overly dynamic in terms of like explosiveness. He's just super skilled with the ball in his hands, and it feels like every time I'm watching Steven Sims, he's making big plays. And so I'd prefer that to not be the case against the Buffalo Bills. So don't deal with that guy. Just do your touchbacks, and the Bills have done that. They've been one of the more aggressive touchback teams, if you will, which is a little bit different than I thought it would be. But, I mean, they got cooked for that kickoff return for a touchdown in week 1, and I think Sean McDermott said no thanks. We'll see. I think that'll take on a life of its own, but I wouldn't be messing with Steven Sims. That guy just makes plays when he gets chances to touch the ball in the return game. So there you have it, folks. Bills, Texans, week 5. Jerry Hughes, Tim Settle, Stefon Diggs. It's going to be a big one. There's going to be some emotional pieces to a game like this where I'm sure Houston's going to want to showcase Stefon Diggs, and I'm sure that the Bills are going to want to show that the Bills can light up a scoreboard without Stefon Diggs while that guy's on the other sideline. So should be fun. And I've got more coverage coming. We still got my final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble as well on our next conversation. There's a lot to get into with Khalil Shakir and his ankle, and Ed Oliver's hamstring, Dion Dawkins' hamstring. Is Bernard and Taron Johnson going to be good to go? There's a lot to talk about. Then, of course, my predictions for the game. So come on back. Don't miss anything. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.